All right, if you're heading to the Queensland bar, you absolutely have to get your head around pleadings. It's non-negotiable. Today, we are breaking down one of the most critical tools in your kit, Rule 155 of the UCPR, all about pleading damages. Honestly, getting this right will save you from some really costly, career-defining mistakes. So let me ask you a question, and I want you to really think about this. Could your very first statement of claim, the one you've spent weeks on, be struck out for a completely avoidable error? The answer is a huge, resounding yes. And believe me, it happens way more often than you'd think. This is a high-stakes game.
But here's the good news. There is one single rule that, if you get to know it inside and out, will basically act as your shield. It will protect you from that exact fate. And we're talking about Rule 155. So don't think of it as some complex hurdle you've got to jump over. Think of it as the key to avoiding a massive mistake right out of the gate.
So, here's our game plan for today. First, we'll talk about the high stakes. Then we'll dive into the core of Rule 155 itself. After that, we'll tackle how to particularize your general damages, which is a big one. Then, the critical no surprises rule. And finally, we'll put it all into practice.
Okay, Section 1, the high stakes of pleading. Look, the days of just throwing in a vague, wishy-washy claim for damages are over. They're long gone. The modern court, especially under the UCPR, demands precision, and it demands it from day one.
And this quote from Justice Atkinson really nails it. It captures the fundamental shift that Rule 155 brought in. Specificity is not optional anymore. The court has to know exactly what relief is being sought, and just as importantly, the other side has to know the exact case they're supposed to meet.
All right, Section 2, the core rule. Let's get right into the text itself. This is the absolute starting point for every single damages claim you are ever going to plead.
And here it is, Rule 155, Subrule 1. A pleading must, and that word must is everything here, it must state the nature and the amount of the damages claimed. This means you have to put a number on it. Yes, even for things like aggravated damages that might feel a bit abstract, you have to state an amount. Now, let's talk about a really common tripwire for junior practitioners, particularizing general damages. This brings us to the nitty-gritty details of Rule 155, Subrule 2. Okay, and let's be super clear on this. This subrule is not optional, it's not a suggestion. It sets out 3 mandatory key components that you have to include in your pleading anytime you're claiming general damages. Let's break them down. You need to burn these into your brain. These are the 3 pillars of Rule 155, Subrule 2. First, under Subrule 2A, you've got to state the nature of the loss. Second, under 2B, the exact circumstances in which it happened. And third, under 2C, the basis for how you calculated it. All 3 are mandatory.
So that's the theory, right? But how does this actually work in the real world in a complex commercial case? Let's take a classic, tricky example, pleading the loss of a valuable commercial opportunity.
The case of Graham and Huddy gives us a fantastic checklist for this. You can't just say an opportunity was lost. No way. You have to plead the specific opportunity, what your client actually would have done to get it, the percentage chance of success they had. And you have to plead the counterfactual, what would have happened otherwise. This is Rule 155, Subrule 2, in action. And hey, a quick one, but don't forget Subrule 3. Rule 155, Subrule 3 says that if you can, you need to break down your general damages claim. So instead of just one big lump sum, you plead separate amounts for things like pain and suffering or loss of amenities of life.
Okay, moving on to our 4th section. And this one is a big deal. You should think of Rule 155, Subrule 4, as the rule of professional courtesy and fairness. It's what I like to call the no surprises rule. So here it is, Rule 155, Subrule 4. It's basically a catch-all provision. And what it means is, if there's anything about how damages should be assessed that could ambush your opponent at trial, you are obligated to plead it. You have to put all your cards on the table, face up. Need a perfect example of this rule in action? Look at this quote from the Seabrook case. If you're claiming aggravated damages, you can't just throw that term in there and hope for the best. Rule 155, Subrule 4 means you have to plead the specific conduct and the qualities of that conduct that were so bad they justify an extra award. No surprises. All right, final section. Let's bring this all home and put it into practice. You know what you need to plead, but where exactly does it all go in the statement of claim to make sure you're actually complying with the rules?
Now, you might think this is a trivial question, but it's not. The case law is full of examples of people getting this wrong, and getting the location wrong can completely undermine all that hard work you've put in.
The Court of Appeal in Meredith versus Palmcam drew a very clear line in the sand on this. The wrong way, as you can see on the left, is to just say something like particulars will be provided later, or to stick them in a separate document like a statement of loss and damage. The right way is to plead them as actual allegations right there in the body of the statement of claim from day one.
And if you ever find yourself thinking that a senior barrister is being a bit too picky about this, I want you to remember this powerful line from the Court of Appeal in Meredith. This is not mere pedantry. These rules are there for a fundamental reason, and the court expects, no, it demands that you follow them.
Which brings us right back to where we started, doesn't it? What actually happens if you get this wrong? What are the teeth behind Rule 155?
The answer is blunt and it's severe. There's no sugarcoating it. Your pleading can be struck out. Cases like Millhouse IAG and Harris v. Australian Departments show that the courts will not hesitate to do it if you don't fix the problems. Just listen to this from Judge McGill in the Millhouse case. The appropriate consequence for failing to comply is to strike out the pleading. And yeah, you might get liberty to replead, but imagine having to make that phone call to your solicitor and your client to explain that mistake.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. The Court of Appeal, in that big Meredith case, used the word preferable to describe the correct way to plead. Now, as aspiring barristers, you have to ask yourself, is preferable a standard you're willing to gamble with? Is that a risk you're willing to take with your client's case and your own reputation? Or are you going to aim for best practice every single time? I think you know the answer.